Thanks for joining us. So our topic today is about sustainability in luxury, and I write about sustainable finance here at Bloomberg News. I guess if you wanted to be corny, you could call us the green is the new black panel. But seriously, textiles, fashion is a big issue for sustainability. The whole industry is expected to do about 8 to 10% of carbon emissions globally. 97% of the materials used in fashion and clothing are brand new, and at the end of their life, 75 to 80% of them end up in landfills. So there's a big sustainability impact of this industry. And we have some wonderful guests here to talk about it today. Let's start off with the sustainability journey with you, Jen, and Rent the Runway. It was sort of in the beginning of your thoughts on the company, and how are you sort of putting that through the whole supply chain and the whole business today?
Yeah, so we pioneered a decade ago bringing the sharing economy into the closet. And the rationale behind doing that was the fact that the closet is fundamentally the most inefficient place in your home, and it traps the most value in your home because 80% of the things in your closet are worn 3 times or less. So if you want to talk about the 75 to 80% of the industry that ends up in a landfill over time, it is the 80% of things that actually are worn 3 times or less that just end up getting disposed. So I thought that we were constantly fueling wastefulness in how we got dressed, and that there was a better way to create a living closet where the closet could actually adapt with you as your size changed and your mood and your job and the weather changed, but that you didn't have to own all of those things. So that is what we've built over the last 10 years is the closet in the cloud, and it's based more around the idea that what the customer has shown us that she's wanted over many decades is the customer actually wants variety. That's why she was buying 68 articles of apparel per year. And when you're giving her the opportunity to access as opposed to buy, she will take that, and that is far more sustainable. So that was the original inception, and since we've built out the model, sustainability has gone from a nice to have as it relates to consumer value proposition to an absolute must-have intrinsic value. So we've thought about the entire process of our closet in the cloud and where can we add sustainability into our end-to-end customer experience. So the biggest piece of this is that we're utilizing an article of clothing for 3 to 4 years of time over many dozens of customers who experience that clothing. But the packaging that we use is entirely sustainable. It's entirely reusable. Even the hangers that are sent out with the garments are recycled. So we continuously think about every element of the experience and year over year how we could make it more sustainable.
Right, and Matt, you also started with a sustainability journey in mind, but now you're thinking, it's time for sustainability 2.0.
Yeah, my story is a weird one. First of all, I never thought I was starting a sustainable clothing brand. That wasn't part of my initial strategy here. I started off with intentions, right? And actually, when we did build a company, I felt weird about telling people that we were sustainable. I felt weird saying the word. I felt weird evangelizing it at all because it wasn't as genuine as the initial intention of why we got involved in the first place. If you don't know our story, it is strange. We ended up in the middle of the Gobi Desert and recognized that there was a community that needed a little bit of support. And so we got involved in a business that was sourcing cashmere directly from these remote communities. It was about helping. It was about doing the right thing. And so at every turn of developing the brand, we've used that intention to guide our practices. Now, as we kind of evolve as a business and scale the business, we recognize we have to kind of go back and put some of the structure in place from a sustainability perspective that the industry is now asking for. When I first started and I was going to meetings and telling people, oh, I'm Matt, I have a sustainable cashmere brand, people would be like, get the hell out of here, kid. What are you doing? No one cares about sustainability. How much does it cost? Is the sweater nice? So it's come full circle. It's really weird, actually. And now we're digging back into programs from, all the way from the corporate level back to the communities in the Gobi Desert to influence like little things, right? Everything from single-use plastic all the way through to our carbon emissions, water usage, chemical usage. Not because, and I want to like make this clear, not because someone told me to do it, but because again, it's the intention, it's the right thing to do. That's been our guiding principle. So for now, it's an exciting time because I feel like I actually have like a meaningful platform to stand on and tell people like this is how you do it. This is what it's supposed to look like. So, anyways, yeah.
Great. Yeah, Cara, you can expand on that a little bit. You work with all these brands like Gucci. How do they get started thinking about sustainability?
Yeah, this is interesting. So I started about 7 years ago, and it's funny, people were like, oh gosh, she got involved in something which is green, and why would she do that? And that was on the heels of a Rana Plaza factory collapse. 1,200 apparel industry workers were killed, and I think the industry realized then that change was on the horizon. And the question back then was, there's no CEO working group. We're not going to redesign an industry from middle management on up. It has to be people that are focused on profitability and sustainability, because only a healthy business can actually be part of a healthy solution. But what does that actually look like? So we put together at the Fair Fashion Center what is now 41 CEOs. They represent about 251 brands and $333 billion in business. And that group has identified the key issues that we need to be working on for collective impact. And I would say what's probably a bit unusual about what we do is we learned a lot from Bloomberg, frankly, looking at SASB, Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, TCFD. What is it that the investment community is looking at when it comes to these big companies as material business risks? You're growing a third of your cotton in a water-stressed area. An investor is quite interested in that. You're using hazardous chemicals that are causing cancer. That creates a risk to your business. So the more this view of it actually affects an investment came together with values-based leadership and the ideas of doing the right thing, I think there's kind of a new collision that's creating a pressure. And therefore, this CEO working group is really looking at collective impact and how do we move together.
Right. Well, we have a poll for the audience just to see your sustainable fashion knowledge. Maybe the poll will come up, use your phones. It tells you on the screen how to do it. And the question is, which fashion material is more sustainable? So use your best guess. It'll be live in 5 seconds. Linen, vegan leather, recycled polyester, organic cotton, wool or cashmere. I can't wait to see how these turn out. But Jen, let's talk about your model for a minute while we're waiting for the polls to come in, because maybe, I'm curious how you look at different materials, but also, is renting the ultimate sustainability play?
I think that anything that increases the utility of the item and is thinking about sharing that item over multiple people and over a period of time is, of course, a more sustainable way to live. But I want to just comment on, to kind of add to what was already said, it's almost like we're at this, for a long time, sustainability was a part of the conversation, but it was happening very slowly. And there's been the confluence of all of these trends over the past 12 months, from the Marie Kondo effect, the idea that we feel like we're just swimming in too much stuff overall, wastefulness, urbanization globally, where people actually are living in smaller spaces and they physically can't have as much stuff as they used to have. The idea that, the Paris Climate Accord, where this really became something on the global scene that politically was important to talk about. So I'm just seeing a dramatic shift in values amongst my, 12 million young female customers. And I think that the change we're going to see over the next 2 years as it relates to sustainability across all of consumer products is going to outpace what we saw over the last 25.
Yeah, that's a great insight. And definitely, actually, it's interesting to see our audience poll here, because only 7% of people said vegan leather is the most sustainable material. So we know that's mostly made out of plastic and polyester. But cotton has a huge water footprint. Wool and cashmere came up very sustainable. That maybe you can talk about what does sustainable really even mean from a materials perspective. This might have been a trick question. We don't really have the answer. So.
Well, I appreciate that everyone did vote for cashmere. I feel like they're doing that just because I'm sitting here, but thanks anyways. I think, what you have to do first is define what sustainable means. And my biggest gripe with this conversation in general, oftentimes, is that the definition is very, very variable and subjective. Ultimately, what I believe is that every brand should define it for themselves, right? And that process begins with having transparency around what it is you do and what you don't do. I've personally never felt that I was doing anything because it was what the industry was telling me to do. I was doing it because it's what I honestly believed as a consumer. It's what I wanted. It was part of my very natural value system. And so as we pushed a different agenda for our business, we felt like we had to first define what our criteria was. So for Cashmere, we look at it from pros and cons. What we see is there's a lot of people who do it that in a way that maybe isn't sustainable, actually. And you read a lot of news about animal cruelty. You read a lot of news about the actual process around the people who are involved in combing or shearing animals. Fine, that exists. There's variability across the spectrum of any sort of material manufacturing. We try and do it our way, right? And our way means, one, we make sure the animal cruelty isn't a problem, right? We actually are focused on cultural preservation, and we work with communities that have been harvesting cashmere, hand combing goats for literally 1,000 years, not because they're like, hey, this is sustainable, but because they don't have electricity, so they can't charge an electric shearer, so they comb the animal. We're about preserving that culture. We're about connecting people and the equality and democratization of the product in the process of connecting people. So that's how we define it. And if we're falling short, which we do, I make mistakes all the time. We suck at plenty of stuff, but we're open about it, and we have that conversation in a format that I think most companies should be having it in. I'm not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. Sorry, I didn't plan for that pun, but it's pretty good. We're really not. Like we just want to be honest, tell the truth, and when we fail and when we make a mistake, we own up to it. We say what we did right and what we want to do better. That's what we're trying to lead in terms of explaining sustainability of anything, honestly.
I think the one other thing that's changed is data. So because we're a rental platform and fundamentally we're sharing this item over multiple people, we get data after she wears it as to the quality, the style, the fit. And so we've been able to understand about a particular style down to where it's manufactured, how it's manufactured, what the ultimate lifetime durability of that product is going to be. So now we are actually able to go back to our thousands of designer partners and help them with data manufacture product that is more sustainable in the first place. Now, why are we doing this? It's because how I make money is asset utilization and therefore ROI. I need it to last longer. But in the process, that data has led to all of our brand partners manufacturing in more sustainable ways overall, because they're not just doing this for Rent the Runway, they're going to change the way they manufacture in their overall business to extend lifetime durability. So that's a major change where the rental model, the sharing economy model, has unlocked a set of data that never existed before, which is what we call wear data, right? All retail in the past, you received data up to the point of sell-through. You would know, and then once it entered someone's closet, you would have no idea how many times it was worn, if it would fall apart, what kind of quality issues there were. Well, that's the data we have. And that then is able to move backwards to inform manufacturing.
It's interesting, I think, just to hinge on to both, because the new disruptive models of doing business in fashion are changing a lot because of businesses like Jen's and also what Matt is doing. A little bit different. I think they have sort of the benefit of information and starting now. I work with a lot of folks that are running $28 billion businesses that have been around for a very long time. So we have a challenge of, if there are 3,000 days left before irreversible climate change, what do those people that have such a massive business have to do and do quickly? So I think really important people are doing things individually. Everybody has to find their own approach. But at the same time, if we don't have a mass of people moving in the same direction on the key areas related to sustainability, can we make specific choices on chemicals? Can we make specific choices on responsible recruitment? What does a preferred fiber strategy really look like? If we don't get a mass of people moving quickly in one direction, it is going to be more difficult to achieve.
Where do you see that movement on materials and chemicals?
So a couple of different things. Something that we actually did with Textile Exchange, which I would say is probably best in class nonprofit in preferred and sustainable materials. So it's very interesting because a lot of the companies have made publicly facing goals, which I know Bloomberg is also tracking now, saying things like we're going to sustainably source 100% of our key materials by 2025. So we started to ask that question, well, what is that recipe? What does that really look like? And it was very gray to try to understand that. So we actually talked to as many brands as we could, CEOs in the community, all of the different nonprofits, and created kind of a good to great reference list for the brands to say, if this is where you are, this is where you should be moving. And we open sourced that at the Textile Exchange conference. There were 499 brands in the room, and we got 80% alignment on that. So I think if we can create that kind of, yes, we all recognize this is the path we need to be walking on, it just creates economies of scale for the future. Same on chemicals.
And Matt, how can you make sustainability a profitable proposition for fashion and luxury?
When I first started, what I recognized was the people that were contributing the most to nonprofit work and actually impacting most of the change at a global level were the people that actually made some money. Right? And the corporations that had the ability to have some input to this conversation had the most money, or had enough that they could make an investment. So it occurred to me really early on that I first had to just figure out how to make stuff that people wanted, so I could sell enough of it so I had some money to give back. Well, it wasn't rocket science. I've also realized on this panel that Jen's much smarter than me. Having said that, we approach it very simply. From a profitability perspective, we're manufacturing and making product, again with that intention, but like we need to hit price points that we know that our customer wants, right? We're going to manufacture and produce with a margin that allows us to make some money. Like we're going to run just like regular business operations. We make certain sacrifices as a business to uphold our value system, but part of our value system is that we need to make money. So that is always kind of a conversation, and we recognize it on a corporate level. It'll never be finished, right? Like there's no magic bullet. I'm like, like profitability. No, like sound business fundamentals, same thing that's driven any good business. You just have to constantly be reconciling what it is you want to be talking about and doing from a values perspective. It's not that complicated. If I could figure it out, I feel like anybody could figure it out.
Yeah, it seems like more people are figuring out the sustainability play here. Jen, I guess you have more competitors to your business model, brands like Nordstrom and department stores trying to get into this rental space. How does that affect you at Rent the Runway?
Well, I'm still waiting for my thank you notes. You know what? I think it's fantastic validation of where the consumer is moving. And if you think about not just the American economy, but the global economy is essentially based around this concept called the pride of ownership. The pride of ownership of a car, the pride of ownership of a new home, the pride of ownership of clothing, new clothing every single year. And in fact, the world of fashion, which is a $2.4 trillion industry, rests upon a myth. It does not work unless it can convince you as the consumer to continuously buy more and more and more things that you do not need. What I am saying is that the pride of ownership is dead, and that the new luxury is the pride of access. If we could provide a way to give customers what they want, which is access to all of these high quality, beautiful, sustainable designer products, that is what they've always wanted. They haven't wanted mountains worth of junk that are sitting in their closets that they don't use. So I think we need to challenge our assumption of what the advertising industry has done, right? Like the advertising industry has created this mythology around constant consumption and constant purchase. And it is, first of all, completely unhealthy for the environment, but it's also unhealthy for our wallets. And there's no reason we have to continuously live in this state of continuous irrationality.
Yeah, just to follow up to that, because this is our luxury conference the year ahead, what is the top luxury trend you're tracking for 2020, Jen?
I think that luxury is all about saving the customer time and personalizing to the customer.
I love it. Okay, so I think we have time for One more question for you, Cara, on what kind of collective action you see the industry taking a little bit more. What are you looking at in the year ahead?
So I think what's super interesting is cross-sector collaborations. There's a lot of knowledge gaps, so finance has to help fashion. Advertising also has to be helped to drive change. So what we're seeing is all of these different, whether it be renewable energy people stepping in, whether it be the chemicals people stepping in, there's going to be kind of a convening in the middle of new business models that will resolve the old problems. So I think that is what is key for the evolution of sustainability. It's got to be a collaborative approach because there's not one company that's going to be doing it alone, and particularly as we always come back to profitable businesses being the healthy solutions, it's going to be important those people figure out how to do that together.
And then we have a lightning round question really fast for everybody. What do you think will be the biggest sustainable luxury trend in 2020? Matt, let's start with you.
Sustainable material development.
Jen?
I think I just said continue. Actually, give me a moment to think about that.
All right, Cara.
What I would say is people coming together. I think this layers of communities and collaboration is what's going to be interesting. Nonprofits are working together to be more efficient. Finance is working together to be more efficient and push things in the right direction. Brands are recognizing that unless they are working collaboratively together and identifying the operating efficiencies that lead to more profitable businesses, none of the whole system is actually going to change. So I think it's that dialogue and kind of lock arms, and we have to move together in the next 3,000 days. That's the next important thing.
Back to you, Jen. You got it.
2020, I think, is about packaging innovation.
Right. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for a wonderful panel.